Greetings and welcome to this latest edition from Zoomcatchers Behind the Screen Cool Conversations with Cool People. We are here with a fellow producer, multimedia video producer. His name is Jake Drake. He's going to tell us about all kind of cool, fun stuff going on for 2023 in the production industry. What trends are popping? How did he get into the industry? What's going on? Let's find out. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me.
We're so happy to have you on. And how are things in beautiful, sunny San Diego?
It's pretty good. I mean, it's a little chilly for San Diego. You can definitely tell who's from here because you have people running around in little puffer jackets and everything like that. But it's pretty lovely actually.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Well, for all the people out there, we're going to just get into this conversation and find out more about yourself. I know just from your bio and your information and your conversations and the conversations that we've had that you are a multimedia producer. You work with some startups and some large name companies. So I'll hand it off to you and tell us, how did you get into the production industry?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. I actually started out in television and film, so got a good opportunity to work with clients like HBO and ABC, Discovery Channel, Hallmark Channel. So if you see any of those cheesy holiday show specials around Christmas time, got a hand in making a few of those, working on some production crews for that. Um, then after that, a few years ago, I actually moved to the Bay Area, Oakland area, and started getting into tech, working with a lot of great folks there. Started working with some startup clients. And then about 4 years ago, moved down to San Diego and then pivoted into higher education. So it's been a little bit of everything. Been able to get my feet wet in just about any industry at this point.
Super, super cool. And I know just from our conversations of like, I'm a listener and a huge fan of SF Jazz. I think you've been involved in that project, some of those projects, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think I started there around 2016 and was there till about 2021. So a lot of really great work was done there with some really talented musicians. I was able to really, I'd say through my work and also work with the crew, was able to put out some really great stuff. Pretty happy about it.
Awesome. Great, great. Well, thanks for that wrap up of who Jake Drake is. And I'd like to launch into, our conversation around production and what's going on, trends and issues around, in general with the
Mm,
industry. And, based on our conversations that we've had, we've talked about philosophy around content
mm.
production, content creation, and the whole idea of quantity versus quality and chasing after what you call the vanity matrix. So I was wondering if you could just tell our audience more about your general philosophy around that.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say my philosophy around content creation in general is focused on creating long-term value for your clients or for your audience. I think oftentimes we can get a little too wrapped up in the likes or the views of an individual piece of work, especially once we put that work on social media. I think, there's a lot of highs and a lot of lows following those likes and views and those types of metrics. But I think you're really only looking at short-term gains if you're really focused on that. But if you're able to provide value for your clients, if you're able to help inform them and solve problems for them and to really educate them in whatever your industry is or focus is, I think you'll be able to find that you'll be able to create a really solid user base that's going to stick with you for the long term.
Mhm. I'm glad you brought that up because I think for content creators, now obviously we do want to pay attention to views. We want more than one view, right? One or two views.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, is it valuable to just try to go for that viral video
Mhm.
or should we, like you say, focus on high quality content, solving problems? And I wanted to ask you about what would be or what has been some of your advice to help clients grow their views and audience organically.
Yeah. Yeah, well, one of the things you mentioned was, chasing vanity metrics and trying to get a viral video or a viral piece of content, I will say I have had clients in the past who've really wanted to try to get that their main goal is to go viral, but not really having much of a sense of what really goes into that, but also not really having any goals around that. And what I find is that when you're in a situation like that, the results tend to fall a little flat. I think for me and what's been helpful for my clients is, really centering the users and the customers that they're trying to cater to and entertain, but also educate and to, focus less on chasing trends and trying to go viral and more actually solving problems for their clients. So I think a good example of this, might be, say you're solving a say your product solves a very specific type of problem. Say it might be a time thing. Say your clients are dealing with a problem that requires a lot of time. So then if you could show your audience that your product saves them time, maybe even saves them a little bit of money, that you're able to really put your customer first and to, really I keep going to this idea of creating long-term value. So I think it's really about creating an ecosystem where, your customer can go to your page. So let's say like your YouTube page, and they can find lots of examples to help them and help them through their day. I think, one example I can actually think of is HubSpot. So I think HubSpot is, a marketing platform that helps marketers with a wide variety of problems, email marketing, social media marketing, tracking and metrics, things of that nature. And I think what HubSpot in particular does that's really well done on their content side is they create a series of videos for use cases and how to's and just general problem solving. And they go about this in a really fun way. Their scripts and their deliveries are really fun and engaging, but primarily, they're really educating their viewers. They're walking people step by step on how to use their product, how it's beneficial to them, how it saves them money, how it potentially saves them time. And I think that's, just one of many examples of how a company is focusing less on less on the vanity metrics side of things, the likes and just the follows, but seeing the bigger picture and creating an ecosystem where the user and the customer has all the tools that they need at their disposal to, improve their work.
I'm so glad you started to talk about client management, expectations, and also issues around building ecosystems and communities.
Mm,
Because I want to delve deeper into that. I think for many newcomers into this industry, they're, kind of focused on, oh my God, I want to be seen. Oh my God, I want my videos to be seen. And we
mhm,
all obviously want
of
that.
course.
But what is your approach when you're initially sitting down with a client who's like, Jake, we wanna grow our business. We want to get to a million views or whatever that is. How do you kind of start out educating, inspiring, and getting the client to think beyond just that metric or those metrics?
Yeah, that's always a challenge because I think it's very easy to come into things as a client, and a client could be any range of folks. This could be an agency, this could be an individual, this could be a large organization. Regardless of who it really is, I think it's very easy and in a way seems very straightforward to just say, all right, we want to really, we really want to double down on our content, our video content and our social media content. We want to get a million views by the end of the year, or we want to get 2 million impressions or whatever it might be, whatever their metric might be. And, like you said, it's very easy to focus on just the views and the likes. But I think, one of the important things to talk to the client about is focusing on longer term goals. So I think if you're a client and your goal is to just be seen, I think that's pretty straightforward. I think what you can do is you can, you can go and find out what the trends are, what trending music is going on. I'm thinking of platforms specifically like TikTok or Instagram. It's really easy to find trending topics, trending audio, and I think as a client, you can play into that and you can really start to gain views and gain likes that way just by copying whatever trends are going on. But if you're actually wanting to, give people a reason to stick around for the coming days and weeks and months and years, I think you really need to dive down into your why and what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to help people primarily. And I will say I think people have had a lot of success in chasing trends, but what you find when you actually try to engage with their content a little bit more is that it typically does ring a little hollow. And if you're trying to find any sort of consistency, I'm especially thinking with, brands or organizations where consistency is very important. When you see them just chasing trends the whole time, it's usually not giving you much of a reason as a consumer of their content to actually stick around.
And those are really, really good points. And I think it's all, at the end of the day, kind of ad hoc and, what an individual client might be needing. Because I can definitely see where, let's say you have a cause that you're trying to bring attention to. Hey, maybe jumping on the trend might be a really interesting new way to bring attention to it. Let's say climate change or some other issues or a passion issue, right?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's all about finding that balance, right? You don't want to be, to your point, you don't want to be like anti-trend because there are some trends that align with your values and align with what you're doing, and if they do, in that case, you should absolutely jump on a trend because it could, help let people in the wider world know what you stand for and what you're all about. Going back to this idea of balance, you don't want to only do trends. That's where, like I said, things start to ring a little hollow. So I think it's really about, coming back to this idea of finding that balance where, yes, when it's advantageous and it makes sense to go to that trend and follow that trend, but to really fill out your content more with um, focusing more on this idea of helping your customer, helping your viewer, helping your client rather than, just jumping on whatever the hottest thing is.
Yeah, and I think, I agree with you. I think if you're taking a long-term approach to that, it's like, for us, Zoomcatchers is like, I want people to look at our videos 5 years from now, and I still want it to feel relevant and
Mm,
engaging and still interesting. Other content creators, might have a different goal and vision. I think, like you're saying, it goes back to what are your goals? What are your short-term, mid-range, and long-term goals? What do you hope to accomplish with your video and your content? What are your clients hoping to attain as well and finding some alignment there?
absolutely.
I want to go back and revisit the issue of creating content for ecosystems, and it
Mm.
ties into what we're talking about, views. Because I know that you produce content for specific ecosystems, and can you elaborate on that and what that looks like for your content creation?
Yeah, of course. I think creating content for an ecosystem is especially important in certain industries like higher education and nonprofit. I'm thinking specifically of the UCSD, so University of California at San Diego, where I work, where to be clear, I'm not speaking on behalf of the university, but what I've seen just in my own personal work with them is, really this need to create, maintain, and to really nourish those ecosystems. And for the university, and I'd say broadly speaking, for more higher ed and institutions like that, one of their important ecosystems is the students. So you really want to provide the students with all the resources that they might need just in their day-to-day life, or this is in terms of furthering and enriching their education while they're at the university or at another institution. You're also thinking about the staff members who work at these institutions, helping them get educated on the events and services and resources that you provide. Also thinking general public and potential students, potential donors. So there's a lot of these different ecosystems that you need to keep track of and to manage and to nourish. And each of these ecosystems have, their own goals and different content that is catered to speak to one over the other. For example, the messaging that you might bring to a channel in an ecosystem focused on undergrads is not the same that you would deliver to a ecosystem of researchers or staff members. So it's complicated in that way because there are all these ecosystems living within the same universe when you think about it. So the universe is the university system, but each little ecosystem, needs to be catered to specifically. It is a challenge there and it is a lot of work. However, you know, by managing those ecosystems and speaking to those viewers, you're really creating and turning yourself into a go-to resource for folks. So if they have a question relating to the university or a particular program or a particular event, by curating and creating and nourishing that ecosystem, you're creating a information hub basically and able to help people there. I mean, again, ecosystems are definitely challenging. It's if you want to go the easy route, it's significantly easier to just, kind of do your own thing and jump on a trend. But if you're looking at long-term value, again, I think it's definitely worth to put in the extra time and effort and really cater to and nurse those ecosystems.
Mhm. Yeah, and, in some of our offline conversations, you talked about the whole idea of a 100,000 views of non-engaged people, or do you
Mhm.
want that 500 highly engaged ecosystem that's waiting for your next video, really deriving meaning, and you're making an impact with your videos with that community, with those communities?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know, kinda jumping off, you mentioned metrics a little bit, and I think in a few of the other questions you mentioned metrics. I think we already chatted about vanity metrics a little bit, like likes and views of an individual video, but there are some really important metrics that I think we can use to your point, to, measure engagement, to look at how folks are interacting with your content rather than, just guessing. So a big thing for me in my own work is looking at impressions and engagement rates. So impressions is basically just a metric that shows you how many accounts on a given platform saw your content. For example, say you put a video on Instagram Reels, let's say, and you have 1,000 impressions. That means 1,000 accounts saw your video. And with engagement rate, which I think is another very important metric, that helps us determine, okay, of those 1,000 people, how many people, stuck around and actually interacted with the content in some way, shape, or form. And so, I really like using those two metrics. One, because they're typically widely available on just about any platform that you're on. So you can get some consistency, but also because it really helps paint a picture of how your content's doing. So, for example, if you have very high impressions, say tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people are watching your content or getting it served up on whatever platform you're on, but you have a very low engagement rate, say you have 1 or 2% engagement rate on something that was seen by a million people, you know, that's not always great. And again, it depends on, what platform you're on and who you're trying to reach. But regardless, getting numbers like that, I think really helps the marketer understand what kind of reach your content is getting, but also, again, whether or not people are actually engaging, whether or not it clicks for them, whether or not they like it.
That's just a great segue to go deeper into that because, that there is the content creation and then there's how is the content performing? And that's something that I think content creators and producers obviously want to pay attention to. And what kind of tips would you have for people to improve engagement rates?
Yeah. Well, I think this is where you can really combine the sciencey aspect of your work with the creative aspect of your work. Um, because I think metrics can, like I said a moment ago, I think can really help inform how your how your content is doing, how large of a reach it's getting, and how many people are engaging with it. But that, really only tells you half the story. So where the creative part comes in and how you can use that to improve your engagement is really seeing what kind of patterns you're noticing. So, say you're a small company and you sell software for other businesses. Looking at your metrics, specifically your impressions and your engagements, you can see what kind of content is doing well. Here, when the creative side comes in, is how you can really boost your engagement. So, if you're seeing, for example, that certain types of videos are getting higher engagement rate, so say short 30 to 60-second videos on Instagram are doing the best for you compared to your other platforms, then you can take your intuition creative side and say, all right, so if these types of videos are doing the best, people are clicking on the links, they're actually watching the full video, things of that nature, then you can pivot a little bit and start focusing more on in this case, your Instagram videos. You know, Thinking of the big picture question of, how do you improve your engagement on your content? The short answer is it depends. But I think you can follow the metrics. I think gives you a really good indication of where your content is heading. But again, also using that intuition as a creative person, as a marketer, and finding, what platforms and what types of videos really resonate with your audience. And, that changes from person to person and from company to company. For some companies, you might be getting a lot of traction on LinkedIn, for example, but maybe not so much everywhere else. So then in that case, you're, using the information that you have, your metrics, to then inform where you're pivoting, in this case, to LinkedIn, to spend more of your time and creative energy on LinkedIn to um, continue to improve your engagement and to continue to basically talk to your customers. So it's at a high level when you're looking at engagement and, how you improve that. It's a big, scary question because there are just so many variables at play. But to distill it down, I think you could follow those guidelines at least to you help you improve those numbers and get some positive results.
Great. Thank you so much for being on. We're here with Jake Drake. Love that name, by the way. Breaking down content creation and production, engagement, metrics. And that leads me into your sounds like you're describing creating strategy around content, your content placement. And I'd like for you to speak more to that. I mean, it seems like I think for a lot of us, we know that some of it's kind of trial and error. Who knows if this
Mhm.
video is going to really pop? That video that you thought was going to pop really didn't. And so, is it a matter of you putting things out there, assessing, looking at what's going on, and then fine tuning your strategy from there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I see it as like a sliding or I guess it'd be more like always a bit of a moving target. So you want your your content strategy to be very flexible because what might work for one video might not necessarily work for another video. Similar with platforms. So if you're a company that has presence on multiple platforms like social media platforms, for example, what works on LinkedIn is not going to work on YouTube, or what works on YouTube is not going to work on Instagram or TikTok. So you do need to be very flexible and to your point, you do need to constantly be of that mindset of just tweaking, tweaking, tweaking. You always need to be a bit of a tinkerer and always adjusting here and there based off of one, what your metrics, and two, what your intuition is telling you. and using that to define and tweak your strategies. I think, looking at how marketers like to approach things in general, I think what we like to do is we like to set a strategy and just go for it. Say let's we set this strategy at the beginning of the year. We're going to follow it through to a year, and then we're going to figure out, what works and what doesn't. And I think on the surface, especially if you're looking at traditional marketing, like back in the day before we had digital marketing and before social media was such a powerful thing, I think something like that um, worked, and it worked really well. But with the rise of social media over the last, 10, 20 years, and also with this huge shift in digital marketing, where we're seeing at a very macro level ad spending going to digital marketing, influence going to digital marketing, and a lot of attention going away from traditional marketing in the physical world and going more digital. I think you need to be very flexible with your strategy. Now, I will say one thing. I think you also need to find balance as well. So what I mean by that, I think, is when a lot of marketers hear me say something like, "Oh, you just need to be flexible. You just need to be dynamic." I think sometimes what they hear is you just need to throw all the rules and all the strategy out the window. Like it doesn't matter. We're gonna throw something at the wall and see if it sticks, and then we're just gonna go from there. I don't think that's always the case either. Again, I think it's about finding balance. So I think it's, setting your strategy at the beginning and setting that consistency. And with that consistency, especially if you're on social media, you want to think of your cadence. So that would be, how often are you posting? So let's say you create a social media digital marketing strategy. And you say, all right, I'm going to post 3 times a week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Again, you need to find that balance. So you need to make sure that you actually truly are posting when you say you're going to post, so that you can have some frequency and consistency with your approach, that you can form a nice baseline and foundation. But again, finding that balance and flexibility where you can adjust things as they come. So, for example, if you are posting 3 times a week, say that you're noticing a consistent uptick in engagement on Wednesday evenings for videos that you post on LinkedIn. That's, I think, where you come in with that flexibility and you say, okay, maybe we should start focusing more on LinkedIn on Wednesday evenings. So let's schedule an additional post to go out Wednesday evenings, you know, so that now you're posting, 4 times a week. You're posting Monday, twice on Wednesday, and then you're posting Friday, and then seeing how that works. So again, I think it's all about finding that balance where you have that consistency and you have that foundation through your set strategy, but also having that flexibility to experiment and to tinker.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up because I did want to, ask you about what tools that you're using to, maintain your calendars and your schedules. What process do you have? Are you planning out for a whole year? Are you in a position to do that? Or is it on a quarterly basis? If you could speak to that, that'd be great.
Yeah, for me personally, it's thinking about planning. Typically, it's month to month for me. I know some marketers are able to schedule a quarter to quarter, others year to year. But for me personally, in my work, it's typically month to month. And, thinking of scheduling that content out, because a lot of my work focuses so much on social media, I'm using tools like Hootsuite to really schedule this content out in advance, so that, I'm not overwhelming myself or overwhelming my team members, so that we can focus on the creative side, so we can focus on our multimedia and our copy, and not having to just roll around in the hamster wheel of just trying to keep up every single month with content. So with that in mind, I think, I think it's important to set aside dedicated days for content. For me, that's typically on Mondays, where I sit down and I batch out pieces of content. That might look like creating short video clips of existing content that you might have. That might look like brainstorming new videos that you want to launch next month or even several months in advance. And you're putting that in place for yourself as basically an insurance policy so that you are always at a point where you have something in the works, something cooking up in the background so that you can keep that consistent content schedule and then you can keep up with that content every single month. And, going back to tools too, I think that's where, for me, just using plain old G Suite, Google Suite has been really helpful for me. Just being able to have shared documents and shared spreadsheets where you can see what's going on, what's scheduled to be next and, looking ahead, what's about to happen. I think it's really about, in a way, creating a content engine, that just keeps churning and churning and churning, um, and really maintaining that.
Hmm. And I think that's where, a lot of content creators and producers, get hung up. It's,
Mhm,
there's the production piece and then there's, the publishing, but a lot of it, the umbrella idea is to maintain some levels of organization around what
mhm,
you're doing. And I like that idea. Okay, Monday I'm going to do this, Tuesday I'm going to do that. And that, and having said that, people need to find systems that work for them that are going
mhm.
to be most beneficial. But having some, like you say, an insurance policy. Okay, I know Monday I'm going to be doing this, and Tuesdays we're going to be doing that.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you can wake up feeling I got to do 5 pieces of code today.
You don't want days like that if at all avoidable. And, things happen sometimes, other work gets in the way and sometimes you can't have dedicated days to do what you need to do. Um, but, at least, setting that, trying to set that aside. If just for yourself, in your own personal calendar, setting aside dedicated content days or chunks of time, blocks of time that you can block out to sit down and create content so that you can give yourself that insurance policy and that breathing room.
Great, great. And that's a great segue to talk about, our the buzzword repurposing of content and
Yes.
short form versus long form content. What's your take on those topics?
Oh man. I am a repurposing zealot. I absolutely love repurposing. I I don't know, it's just magic to me. I think it's one of those things where in a way, the idea of repurposing goes very much against the grain for a lot of marketers because I think we're very focused on what's next and the new thing and the new piece of content and the new shiny video and the new graphic that we're creating or whatever it is. But I think what a lot of us don't really realize is that there's just a gold mine that we're sitting on top of existing content that really just needs to be refreshed. And then we can really take advantage of it. And I think this works well for variety different types of content. So this works really well for written content. Repurposing works really well for video content, for graphics, for just about any type of content, you name it. I think it could be repurposed. I think it's really about sitting down and asking yourself, okay, so how can I reframe this existing piece of content and give my viewers a fresh take on something that they might already know about. I think actually an example of this is, at the very beginning of the call, you mentioned SF Jazz. And one of the big things that was really helpful in kind of my own journey and really getting into repurposing is taking advantage of SF Jazz's existing video archive. So that organization has been around since I believe the 1980s. And because they're all about recording a lot of their concerts, they had this massive archive of just amazing songs and video and, original artwork and things of that nature that was really for the most part just sitting there, where the idea was that we would use it eventually, but for a long time it wasn't really wasn't utilized. Then the pandemic hit. So in, March 2020, obviously the world shut down. And so the organization is thinking, shoot, what do we do? Because we can't do concerts anymore. It's just not safe. So, I myself and a small team was able to really take advantage of a lot of that existing content. In that case, I believe they had around 90 terabytes of video footage. So massive archive. And, monetize that and really make up for the lost revenue from the pandemic. And, I'm really happy to say that, the team and I were able to, in just a short 14 months, build up from nothing to a digital platform that was able to bring in 1.4 million in revenue. So that's, I think a really great case of really building on top of your existing content. And I think even if you're a relatively small company and say you just run a blog, I think you certainly can really take advantage of repurposing and also kind of cut yourself a bit of a break, because
Right.
instead of spending all of your time writing new content or producing new content, you're instead, really taking full advantage of material that you already have.
Now, would you say that the whole idea of the repurposing of content really, took hold after during the pandemic, or was it trending even before that?
Hmm. Good question. I would say personally, that's the pandemic is when I first started noticing it really picking up.
Mhm.
I think it had been a trend for, or at least it had been around for quite some time. I'm thinking of a company called Buffer, where so they're basically a scheduling platform for social media, where you can put your content in there and schedule it for a later time. But what they did back in, I believe it was 2016. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was like around 2016, 2017. They had done an experiment for themselves where for a week they created no new content, zero new content, and just repurposed their existing blogs and then measured the results. And just through that little experiment, a few years ago, they were able to find some really, really positive results. They were still getting lots of really great traffic. They were still getting high engagement rates on their content. They were getting very long view times on their blogs. And, they were spending a fraction of their time just repurposing this existing content. So, rather than spending several days or even several weeks writing blog content and trying to do something new, you're only taking a few hours and you're, reframing the problem. You're reframing your blog post, you're reframing your solutions where you're still providing that really great value that your customers are expecting from you, but you're also doing it in a fraction amount of time.
Mhm. And isn't that what we're all trying to do, right? Cut down on the
Absolutely.
time. And we know that a big part
Absolutely.
of, production is just takes time, right? So
Hmm.
anything we can do to cut down on that is obviously something we're all striving for. It's so interesting, and I don't. It looks like that trend is kind of here to stay, probably just
Hmm.
because there's so much content out there, and what's old is new again, right? So they say,
All comes full circle.
all comes full circle.
Yep.
Awesome. Before I move into our next topic, I did want to ask you about your idea about videos needing a hook. So talk more
Hmm.
about what hooks what hooks you.
What hooks me? Ah, the hook. So, I when it comes to video production and video creation, I'd say the hook is probably one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of really any video you create. And that's mostly due to attention span. I think to your point about there just being content all over the place now, it's very difficult to cut through the noise nowadays because people have such great access to so much content. And because of that, you need to try very hard to grab your viewers' attention. And with that, you generally only have about 1 to 3 seconds to do that. So not a lot of time. So, you can't do this gradual lead up into your point. You can't do this, long form storytelling. It's not like a movie. It's not like you're sitting in a movie theater and you're, you know, waiting for this big storyline to move up. In our case, because we're online, we're digital, we need to get their attention really quick. And so that's where the hook comes in. And so basically what a hook is, it's in video, it's a opening statement that's used to grab your viewer's attention. So a good example of this might be sharing important information for your viewers. It might be telling viewers what they might learn from the video. It and I think a good example of this might be really just putting together a tried and true example is introducing a problem and then providing a solution. So, say that type of stuff is really great for products that do very specific niche problems, or you could actually zoom out and you could apply this to other industries. So, say we want to make a video for a higher education, and we're tailoring this to undergrads. And so a problem that we might present is, applying for that school. Say I'm a potential student, I just graduated high school and I want to go to this particular university or college. What do I do? So in this video, this particular hook is presenting that problem of, hey, you're a high school student trying to get into this university. What do you do? And then you provide the solution to that problem. So that might look like providing resources on links and web pages of, application material. It might be an FAQ. It might be a case study on how to apply and what the process is like. So it could be any number of things, but I think broadly speaking, your hook is really just the way to grab your viewer's attention, do it very quickly, do it very efficiently, and then move on with whatever the main point of your video is. Because if you're taking more than 2 or 3 seconds to ramp up to your main point, you've already lost them because people have access to such great content nowadays.
Mhm. It's like moving on, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because, it's an art form to be able to get that, that 2 minute, 2 second or 3 second attention span. So it's not easy, right?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I would spend, if you're creating a video, I would definitely dedicate a good chunk of your time to that hook, really hone it in so that you can actually get a watch. Again, because people have so many options on so many different platforms. You basically need to come to them and tell them why they should care.
Love it. And also, the good old fashioned pain point, right? We're here
Main
to,
point. Absolutely.
we're here to address your pain point, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Awesome. We're here with Jay Drake and we're breaking down attention spans and points. And I do want to turn our attention to something that we talked about in conversations, the idea of the producer being a stakeholder
Mhm.
and what that means and elaborate on that idea so our audience can understand. It's like, really? I'm a stakeholder? Yes, you are.
Absolutely. I mean, I think because the amount of time and effort that you're really taking and spending into this, I think it's in many ways a bit of a reflection on you. So I think you certainly do have a stake in it in how it turns out and you know meeting some of those goals. So I think when thinking of this idea as the producer as a stakeholder, I think that really helps inform how you talk to your clients. So I think it really changes the dynamic. So it's less of a, here I am just to provide you with a video, just like copy and paste, like here's your thing. But it's a lot more of a dynamic relationship now that you're a stakeholder. So I think with that, it helps provide assurance to your clients, and I think it helps provide some some safety and some security as well, letting your clients know that you do have a stake in this, that you do want to see the best for this particular video, and you want to do your best to mitigate any sort of risk that might happen along the way as the project happens, and that you have the client's best interest involved by creating the best possible video that you can with the time and resources that you have.
And I'm so glad you bring up the time and the resources because, I think for people, in this field, if you're starting out or been around for a while, it's important to, set healthy boundaries around that
Mhm,
and realistic expectations. It's like, "Oh my god, we need this video produced." "Okay, when?"
mhm,
"Uh, tomorrow." "Okay, how much money do you have?"
mhm.
It's just like, "We can produce that, but how big is your bank account?" And to be honest about that because, we all want work and we all want working gigs, but you don't wanna be working to death, and so I
Mhm.
think it's important to, early into those relationships say, "Okay, this is what we can realistically do, as a producer based on the time you've presented this project to us and the deadlines and the budget that you have, as opposed to, okay, we'll take it, we'll do it." And then you're up, you know,
Yeah.
burning the midnight oil all week. And
Yeah, you don't wanna do that if at all possible, but yeah, I mean, I think to your point, it is really all about, setting those expectations early on and giving folks a good idea of, what a realistic timeline is. So, if someone wants you to come in and as a producer, come in and shoot, record, and edit a video that's then going to be turned into a 60-second video on social media, and then is also going to have, you know, turned into a 15-minute long YouTube video and create all these other assets, that's fine and great, but it's probably not going to be done by the end of the week. And as the producer, it's definitely your job to set expectations and to just be transparent with your client. I think oftentimes we can get a little nervous and apprehensive about letting people know what a realistic timeline is because we're afraid that those clients won't work with us. But, what I've found is that being upfront and honest with your clients early on, really is the best solution to establish healthy boundaries so that, like you said, you're not burning the midnight oil and for both parties to come out of it with a positive experience rather than it being a situation where, say the client's frustrated and annoyed because, you know, they feel like they didn't get an accurate idea of what you could deliver. And so that you're not frustrated because you spent, your entire evening trying to put this thing together when you could have been doing other things. So I think, yeah, communication is extremely important with this. And I think most clients understand, especially as you're starting out, you might have a few of those clients who have a very long list of things that they want and a very, very short timeline and a very small budget. And in those cases, I guess it's completely up to your own discretion as the producer on whether or not you take those roles. I think in some cases, depending on any number of factors, you might want to take it, but I mean, I if at all possible, you want to put yourself in a position where it benefits you, but it also benefits the client, and that's where I really think the communication with the clear expectations really comes in.
Mhm. Thank you for clarifying that because, everyone wants a win-win situation. The producer obviously
Absolutely.
wants a great video, but it's like if you're asking me to do a documentary and a whole social media calendar by the end of the week, it's just probably not gonna happen. But
Yeah.
how big is your bank account? Right? Before I say no, let me think that through.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah, and I think too, it's like, yeah, to your actually explaining that to people to your point of, you were saying, like, how big is your bank account? Because it's like, I if if someone does want something really quick, I mean, you as the producer honestly should be, working in rush fees into your budget and into your expectations. And I think going back to this idea of clear communication, I think, I think clients generally will understand of like, hey, this is my, these are my expectations. This is a rough timeline. We can adjust that and we can make that shorter. However, you know, you're you as the producer, you're gonna have to charge a fee on top of that because and then just being clear with them. You know, like, for example, you say, "Oh, but I am charging a 20% fee on top of this because, I'm unable to take on new clients in order to satisfy this expectation." It might look something like that. But yeah, just again, being very clear and upfront with them and just letting them know. I think too, to add to that is setting office hours essentially. So with those expectations, you may say something like either in the either in the conversation or in written form, or actually preferably both, always put it in writing, is, okay, so here are my office hours. Here's when to expect to hear a reply from me. So, example of that might be I'm available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. I reply to emails, typically within 2 hours of receiving them. I'm available by phone until 5. And then, you know, after that time, then it's kind of up to you. Either, I respond the next business day or I do respond, but I have to charge you or something like that. But, it's all about, protecting your time, but also again, going back to the idea of setting very clear expectations so that your clients kind of know what to expect and what's happening.
That's great, and I think it's a great way to have a successful, productive relationship where it's like, "Okay, I can do this project, but these are the things that I need you to understand. If we
Yeah.
take this project on based on the description, the timetable, budget, and all these things so that they know, going into it where we all stand. Everybody knows their position,
Where we're standing.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Great. Great. We're moving into the bottom of this conversation. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Every time I talk to you,
That's
I
been
feel
a
like I
blast.
learned something new and it's exciting. I feel like we're in a very exciting time for content creation and production. So many tech tools and trends that are
Hmm.
going on. And I wanted to ask you, what are some of your favorite tech tools that help you out? What are your go-tos?
Oh boy. So many tools. I mean, I will say I basically live in the Adobe Creative Suite most of my days. So that's definitely a big old that takes up a sizable portion of my tool belt these days because I do so much, as a multimedia producer, I think you do a little bit of everything. So you're not just doing video. You're doing audio editing, you're doing motion graphics, you're doing, just about anything that needs to get done to make the video and turn it into something worth sharing. So, I'm using Adobe Premiere Pro, I'm using After Effects, I'm using Adobe Audition for audio sweetening and audio editing. Um, and of course the classics, Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator. So just using that whole suite and, those are my tried and true, really. I know there's a lot of really great products out there that have come out that I think are really changing the game, specifically with video editing. I think we're seeing a lot of domain specific tools. I'm thinking specifically with things like podcasting. I'm seeing tools like Descript is a big one for audio editing and social media posting. That's really huge. On the in the video editing space, there's been a lot of interesting movement with AI. So there's this one particular I'm thinking of called AI that I've gotten a chance to mess with a little bit. Very interesting tool if you do a lot of background painting. So say you're trying to remove an object from the background of a video. Will save you quite a lot of time. Trying to think what else. Black Magic has been really impressive. DaVinci Resolve for audio editing. They're really trying to go after Adobe as much as they can, which is funny because I think maybe 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, they were just, this little unknown, like nonlinear editing company, like very old school, $10,000 machine that you would buy as a, like Hollywood studio to edit your films on. But they've gone from that in just a short amount of time to now being a major player for video edit and a lot, in a lot of cases, especially their entry level software is free. So, if you're someone who's just starting out, or if you're just playing with video editing here and there, but you still want something that has a lot of really great industry standard tools, I think something like Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve is definitely a great tool to check out. And one more thing too with graphic design. I know as a multimedia director and just being in the digital space, graphic design is a huge thing, but you don't always have the time or the budget to bring in a graphic designer. And that's where I think things like Canva are really impressive. They're also have done a few updates for to their software where they do very simple animations as well. So, if you're doing a lot of work on social media, you need to turn things around quickly, or you just don't have a whole lot of time to dedicate to graphic design. I think, Canva's definitely a tool to help you out.
Those are that's a great list, and I want to also mention I'm new to Descript. I'm just playing around with that super powerful tool. Easy to relatively easy to pick up, and I think there's so many cool tools out there for people that really want to get into this space and make high quality, great video. Also want to give a shout out to Ecamm. We use Ecamm for
You
our
can.
podcasts and our live streams, and love them. And yeah, there's a lot of great tools out there. Canva, check, love that one. Just so much you can do with it. So, for everyone's gonna, find their tools and their best and their go tos. And so, just curious to see was Jake. What's Jake using?
Oh, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. Excellent. And then finally, what trends do you see for content creation and production for 2023?
Oh boy. It's getting kind of interesting out there. I mean, looking at social media, where we're thinking of trends here, TikTok is pushing still video and Instagram is pushing video. Two things that I never thought would happen. But here we are in 2023 and those two things are happening. It's like TikTok and Instagram are trading places. But aside from that, I think, there's a lot of interesting trends that we're seeing in the production world. I think looking at, how we're doing video, I think I think that's changing quite a lot too. I think a few years ago, if you were to ask me what kind of trends are we seeing with production, I would have told you long form video for sure. 100% long form video, doing 10, 15-minute long videos, explainer videos, documentaries, things like that a few years ago were huge. And then maybe 2 years ago, it'd be short form video, 60 seconds or less, do it really quick. Don't, the take would be something like, don't even think about long form video. Just don't touch it. And now we're seeing a bit of a combo of really three different things, both short form, medium form, and long form, and using all those. So, with that idea that, we're seeing video forms change so much, you know, I personally try to build all of that within my content creation ecosystem. So, what I like to focus on is first creating long form video. We're thinking, 10, 15-minute long videos, put that on YouTube, and then cut that down a little bit to just a few minutes and sharing that on, for example, like Instagram Reels, which I think, can do up to 2 minutes, 3 minutes now at that point. And then follow that up again with short form video. We're thinking anywhere from 15 to 60 seconds. And, really building out that content ecosystem. So I think, for me, looking at production trends because they change so much, I think it's for me less focused on just an individual trend and less focused on either or, is it short form video or is it long form video or is it medium form video? Focusing less on any of that and seeing it more big picture of, okay, how can I fit all of this into my strategy and how can I get the most bang for my buck in terms of the content that I'm creating?
Awesome. That was a great way to look at it because it kind of feels like hybrid and so much is really happening and who knows how things may, turn 6 months from now. We
Yeah.
all need to keep our finger to the pulse, so to speak, and keep paying attention. Jake, it has been a pleasure having you on. I learned so much and thank you so much for imparting all your production and content creation wisdom. And where
Oh,
can people find you on your
uh,
socials?
oh yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there, and I'd love to chat. So find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message. Happy to chat.
Great. So that is a wrap, folks. We have been here with Jake Drake, multimedia video producer. He laid down a lot of information. Hopefully, it has been informative for people. And thanks for watching this edition of Behind the Screen Cool Conversations with Cool People. And we will see you next time.